Like any self-respecting millennial female, I went through a big Titanic phase, you know, roughly around the late 1990s. And so when Magellan released the 3D scans of the Titanic, you know, the Titanic news before the tin can thing happened, the archaeologically interesting news, they completed this very in-depth 3D scan of the wreckage all around it, the ship itself.
What makes this different, it is a true digital twin of the Titanic.
And they've been able to identify a lot of really interesting things like serial numbers on propellers. But for this video in particular, Magellan released this press release claiming that they found a Megalodon shark tooth necklace in the Titanic wreckage. And I was like, huh, interesting. This is weird. And it looked like it was more than just a shark tooth necklace because of the things around it, but I didn't really think too much of it at first. But then I read this article that Magellan, bless their hearts, their little nerdy hearts, they are going to use AI to identify the owner of the Megalodon shark tooth necklace. And the way that they're gonna do this is, and I quote, analyzing video footage of passengers boarding the ship, scanning those images and video footage, and then running it through a facial recognition technology to catalog the clothing that they wore that day. Once analysts are able to determine which passenger wore that necklace while boarding the ship, they can begin the process of finding the living relatives of the necklace's owners. What? Magellan, no, baby, honey, that is not how fashion worked. That is not how this is going to work. Let me explain something to you. During the Edwardian era, people wore certain types of clothes for certain events. The social class that would be rich enough to own a Megalodon shark tooth necklace would not be wearing it while boarding the ship. They would be in traveling clothes. We're talking masculine sort of dresses, even for women, suits, high-necked shirt waists, ulsters, or some sort of woolen overcloak, depending on how that weather was at the particular moment. But it was April in like Cherbourg and also Southampton. It's not gonna be very warm. They're not gonna be wearing that necklace. So you all can AI scan that footage, give it the Peter Jackson treatment all you want. You're not gonna find someone wearing that necklace. Like, I will literally eat a boot if someone's actually wearing that necklace while boarding, because it does not fit with the social hierarchy and etiquette of jewelry wearing and clothing wearing at the time. Like, that's not what people would have worn. If that necklace was going to be worn, it would have been worn for evening wear and dinner and more formal occasions, because it is a standout piece and it is meant to be shocking. And just for clarity, yes, people did have jewelry made out of shark teeth and other reptilian animals at this time. There's no actual proof that this necklace was even meant to be worn as a piece of actual jewelry and not actually, in fact, a representation of an anthropological group of artifacts. Okay, so while Magellan is wasting time with this AI concept, I'm here to help. And I, being a rabbit hole loving Titanic girly who loves a good fashion history mystery, went way down this rabbit hole to try and figure out who could have possibly owned this necklace. Hi. Okay. So did you know that the Titanic had on board 15,000 individual bed sheets? Did you also know that those bed sheets were made out of linen? Because the Titanic wanted every customer to have the most luxurious bed experience while on board. Which brings us to the sponsor of this week's video, Brooklinen, which is a luxurious home good company that believes in fair and affordable pricing for quality products. Not only do they have like over 100,000 like 5-star ratings, but they also have tons of different colors and designs to choose from. This is the latest sheets that we got. I kind of got really excited by like summer, and so I went with like this sort of like summery sherbet like color for the duvet top, and then like this lovely turquoise color for the sheets. But we've had tons of Brooklinen sheets over the years, haven't we, buddy? And let me tell you, linen is by far and away the most luxurious bed experience, because linen as a plant itself is the best at keeping you cool and comfortable because of how we make linen. It's made out of the flax plant, and so it's a natural reedy material, and so it is just naturally going to wick away away all perspiration and moisture. So if you're a hot sleeper, linen is definitely the best material. Plus, linen is naturally antimicrobial. You'll know this if you've ever watched my laundry video, and we talked about this. I probably should have shown you what the packaging looks like, but to be frank with you all, I was so excited to get these sheets that like I ripped everything open and I threw it in the wash immediately because I just like wasn't thinking. I was just like, eyes on the prize. I want my new linen sheets on my bed. My point is this: I have been a fan of their company for years now. This is one of the reasons why I work with them, is because I genuinely love their product. If you come to my house, more than likely you're going to be sleeping on some Brooklinen sheets. You know what I mean? If you want to give Brooklinen a try and get $20 off it, your $100 order, go to the link in my description and use the code ABBYC to get that discount, okay? For the best bedding bang for your buck though, you're going to want to get that linen hardcore bundle because it'll save you 25% and it comes with everything you need to completely refresh your bed. A fitted sheet, flat sheet, duvet cover, and 4 different pillowcases. A huge thank you to Brooklinen for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to more Titanic facts, shall we? And mysteries. Part 1. The evidence. All right, so in the video footage that Magellan released about the Megalodon shark tooth, what you actually see is the necklace surrounded by other artifacts. What we're actually looking at here is a collection of Southwest Pacific artifacts. We have the pig tusk that's probably meant to be a bracelet, and then on the other side we have some beads. Now this pig tusk is actually easily identifiable for experts in the Fiji, New Guinea, and specifically Vanuatu islands and cultures. In fact, according to Stuart Bedford, who is the senior fellow at the Australian National University, is 100% confident that that artifact is from the Southwest Pacific region of the world. New Guinea and Fiji were both colonies of Great Britain, and Vanuatu was actually colonized by both France and Great Britain at this time. It was not uncommon for these tusks to be brought back over to Europe. So I do want to lay the groundwork there. It's not that this is so unusual that it's never existed before. I was able to actually find a Victorian bracelet made out of this pig tusk that looks actually very similar to the one that's at the bottom of the ocean. So the collection of beads that are sitting on the other side of the necklace further indicates the Vanuatu connection. Kirk Huffman, who is the honorary curator of the Vanuatu Cultural Center, states in an article that those beads actually look very, very similar to the beads that are used in Vanuatu for currency. So we now have 2 pieces that have a very strong Vanuatu connection. Going through other museum websites, I was able to easily draw the connection to shark teeth being a part of Maori, Samoan, and other Southwest Pacific cultures when it comes to jewelry. This all makes sense. They're all seafaring cultures. Of course, they're gonna have like jewelry made out of shark teeth. Like it just makes logical sense. Basically what I'm getting at is we need to stop looking at the shark tooth necklace as a single entity, but we need to look at what we're seeing around it as a whole and the collection as a whole, which is something that is coming from the Southwest Pacific Islands. Now, let's talk about the necklace for a minute. Magellan goes on and they say explicitly that this is a Megalodon shark tooth necklace. They don't actually explain how they made that decision versus say just like a great white shark tooth. They just say, hey, it's a Megalodon shark tooth. So while yes, in theory, Megalodon shark teeth were around, they were in the news, they were very, very popular at this point in time in the 1900s, that doesn't necessarily mean that the necklace at the bottom of the ocean is actually a Megalodon shark tooth. In fact, there's a lot of people in comments of these videos debating this, and frankly, I don't think a lot of people actually believe it's a Megalodon shark tooth. However, for the sake of the debate, let's actually break down the evidence that we have to see if we can figure it out. When it comes to the research that I've been able to do about Megalodon shark teeth, specifically within the period of time itself, so at the early 20th century, Bashford Dean, who was actually the curator of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, stated that the Megalodon shark teeth in their collection that they were making the jaw out of vary in size anywhere from 2 inches in length to 6 inches in length. So obviously we have a great, very varied size for Megalodon shark teeth. So we need to keep in mind that just because it's a Megalodon doesn't necessarily mean that it's like massive, right? It could be much smaller. With great white sharks, the longest their teeth seem to get is like at max maybe 3, like that's the longest one that has like ever been recorded, but on average they seem to max out around 2 inches. So we do have a very small bit of crossover between a great white shark and a megalodon shark, but it's a very, very small amount, okay? How do we figure out the size of the necklace? So there's a couple of factors working against us. One, they're at the bottom of the ocean, we don't have them dug up. So we can only work off the evidence that is in front of us. The problem with the evidence that has been presented is that, you know, it's not presented at the best angle. It's literally a moving shot. It's not shot directly down overhead. We also don't know the lens that they used to take these scans. So something about when you're working with cameras is the size of the lens and how wide it is, it will cause distortion. So it will make things appear larger than they actually are the closer to the lens that they are. So if they were working with like a 12mm, 16mm sort of lens, anything that's closer to the camera lens itself in that movement, it's gonna be distorted compared to the things behind it. So we have to kind of keep that in mind. Like, this could be slightly distorted. I didn't really notice any distortion like I can on like YouTube videos. Like, I can always tell when someone's shooting wide at this point because things get funky. Doesn't mean that they didn't shoot it with a really wide angle lens, which logically also makes sense because they're trying to get as much information into the shot as possible, right? Okay, so how do we figure out the size? We look at the tusk. So when I was researching these tusks, I found quite a few online. Some are being sold at auction, some in museum collections, and I was able to kind of figure out an average size because I was like, well, how big is this one down at the bottom of the ocean? Like, honestly, we don't know for sure, but I can say the average size for these tusks, the outer diameter, seems to be anywhere between 10 to about 13 centimeters in diameter. So that puts the interior diameters roughly around 3¼ inches in diameter, okay? So, you know, there are a couple images of Vanuatu people wearing these tusks like on their person, and yeah, this sort of like 3 to 4 inch inner diameter is what makes the most logical sense. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the best image of that shark tooth and we're just gonna figure out the proportion of it, and we're gonna count how many fit on the interior of that tusk to the best of our ability. Now, when I did that, it gave me roughly 3 teeth. So what that means is that that tooth is honestly somewhere between like 1.5 inches to 2 inches long, and that's it. Even with the variables, like yes, that tusk bracelet could be huge, it could be massive, it could be the biggest one of all time, and we'd have no idea. Or, you know, proportions could be wrong. So I think the likelihood of this thing being like a megalodon is unlikely. I think it's a part of this larger collection of artifacts from the Vanuatu like islands, maybe New Guinea, maybe Fiji, somewhere down in that region of the world, and that they need to be viewed together. But it's probably not a megalodon shark tooth.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
But the next question is, who owned them and why were they on the boat? Part 2, who owned the damn things? Well, yes, it is probable that basically anyone in first class could have owned these artifacts. I used a few criteria to narrow it down. I'm looking mainly at first class passengers. Why? Because who else would have a collection of Vanuatu stuff on the Titanic? Only the super rich people, okay? Except for one exception. You'll understand why when we get to him. To me, if you have something like that on board, that indicates to me that that is a permanent removal of artifacts to the United States. So I was looking at passengers who had a reason to bring these things over to the United States. And that is in part people who were American, okay? Or who at least lived in America full time. Finally, a logic approach as to why. Why would this person have this? Why would someone have this on board the ship? I think I'm gonna honestly start with the most likely person, the easiest mark, if you will. Possibility number 1 is, of course, John Jacob Astor. He is the wealthiest man on board. He was worth $150 million, which is the equivalent of $4.6 billion today. So more money than God. He also was extensively traveled just as a person. He traveled a lot. He traveled all over the world. So we have that international interest that is there. So someone who could feasibly be interested in collecting artifacts from Vanuatu and the Southwest Pacific region. Furthermore, he has a direct connection to the American Natural History Museum. It was really hard for me to find this connection, but I was able to find a newspaper article from the period that stated he was affiliated with the museum. Don't forget, at this time is also when the museum is doing a lot of press about the megalodon jaw reconstruction and the teeth and it being on display and and how big it was, and having John Jacob Astor's connection to the museum, this all kind of fits neatly into a bunch of little boxes of he could have found these pieces at a shop and as a collector and decided to purchase them, or maybe he was going to donate them to the American Natural History Museum. It's hard to say. The likelihood and the feasibility is there. The next one is George Widener. In 1912, he was listed as being worth $50 million, which comes out to $1.5 billion in today's money. But when I was reading articles from the sinking, discussed about how he really loved to buy his wife really eccentric and ostentatious pieces of jewelry. In 1909, this newspaper reported that he bought his wife a pearl necklace where the pearls were the size of pigeon eggs, and it was listed to be worth $750,000. Like, this guy threw down for his wife. The other thing is that his son, who also died in the sinking, was actually a collector of rare books and manuscripts. In fact, one of his purchases while they were in Europe before they sailed back on the Titanic was a 16th century copy of Bacon's essays, and actually that book was lost in the sinking. So we have a family that is insanely wealthy, likes to buy weird pieces of jewelry, and they were in part on the trip to collect things. That also puts him within the realm of feasibility. The next possibility, I actually kind of view them as a duo because in part they were traveling together, and that is Major Archibald Major Butt, and Francis Millais. They were friends. So one of the things that was written about Major Butt in these newspaper articles coming out after the sinking, and they're talking about notable people, was how he's one of the most well-traveled officers in the Army. Major Butt spent a lot of time in the Philippines. That is where he met Taft. He also lived and worked in Mexico for the government. So this man traveled a lot. I don't know his wealth status. I don't know if he could have technically afforded these artifacts, but it seems likely. The reason he was over in Europe at this point in time was that in 1911, he actually basically had a bigger health crisis, and he was given roughly 50 days leave in February of 1912 to basically go and have some R&R. Wouldn't that be nice? I'm gonna let that one sit there for a second. You all know what I'm saying. I don't have to say it, but you know what I'm saying right now, right? Okay, good. Glad we had that talk. And so he was just basically making his way back. So while he was over in Europe, he could have been collecting. Obviously, he's interested in traveling the world. He's interested in the world around him. Now, his friend, Francis Millais, he was an artist, and he was just also known for being really well-traveled. That's really all I got. So I'm like, well, he could be. He was also first class. Like, it's a possibility, right? And I just kind of have a hard time fully separating them out since they were obviously traveling together, and, you know, their luggage could have been mixed up together. Like, who knows, right? Now, the next person is one of the few people that actually has a direct connection to the Southwest Pacific Australia area of the world. And that is actually Colonel John Weir, or Weir. So while Colonel Weir was American, he spent a lot of time in Australia. He lived there for a period of time. He had children in Australia. And at the time that he was sailing back on the Titanic, he had been spending several months abroad traveling with his children. Now, I'm not 100% sure if these were also his Australian children because he divorced his wife in Australia and then he married someone else. And so, you know, he did what rich white men do and they just have children all over the world. Now, we do have two jewelers and who were in first class who were specifically traveling to Europe on buying trips. The first one is Irvin Louis, and then the other gentleman is Engelhart Ustby, and he frequently went on purchasing trips. And so when Ustby came on board, he was actually known specifically to have brought on board jewels, precious gemstones, other precious items, and gold. We know for a fact that he had valuable items on board. It also is completely within the realm of possibility that he found these items, the tusk and the tooth necklace, and even like the beads, thinking of them as maybe a necklace, and went, oh, I'll purchase these and sell them as just like really unique pieces of jewelry. The one second-class passenger that we have is also the only Australian, and that is Arthur Gordon McRae. At the time, from what I can tell, he was not living in Australia at this specific time in his life. I think he might have been actually either living in West Africa or Siberia, and I also was not able to tell how he got to Europe. And he was traveling actually to go to Canada to visit friends. It could be that maybe he had the stuff with him to like give us gifts. I don't really know. You can't fully rule him out just because of his connection to that part of the world. Is he my number one? No. I think the more likely two people to look at more closely is going to be either John Jacob Astor or Widener. I think both of those men with their extreme wealth and their collecting habits, they seem to be more within the realm of possibility. Now, you'll notice that I did not include Guggenheim, Strauss, or the Duff Gordons in this. The Duff Gordons actually, back in like 2012, their inventory of what they lost was discovered at the old law firm that they used when they were going through the whole court cases and all of the crazy legal stuff that happened after the sinking of the Titanic. And to me, if a Megalodon shark tooth was listed as lost items, I feel like that would have made the Daily Mail in 2012. And it's not. We know how the Daily Mail is. If that stuff was on the list, it would have made the article. And it didn't. So I don't assume that they were the ones that had it. Guggenheim and Strauss, I just honestly couldn't find a why. You know, it's like obviously they held the wealth, and the why could simply be just because, completely within the realm of possibility, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't think it was worth including them in this list when there are other people on the list who have better motivation to have purchased these items. I mean, like, I think the whole mystery around the shark tooth is really cool. I think there's a lot to be said as to like collecting and why people had this stuff with them on this ship, and like why was it there? What was the connection? What was the motivation? It's an interesting mystery, you know. It's a mystery that doesn't harm anyone. It's a mystery that I think is really fun, and maybe one day we can figure out the answer to. I don't think AI is gonna help Magellan. I do hope maybe my connections, maybe I can inspire someone to go dig themselves to see if maybe they can find the connection. I hope that you guys found this very niche thing interesting. I really enjoyed researching it when I was doing it. And so with that, my friends, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That helps the algorithm for me and for you. And also don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you all back here next time with another video. Bye. So again, $20 off, $100, Abby C, link below. You got this. A huge thank you to Brooklyn for sponsoring this video. You kind of ruined my intro, buddy. But you're so much cuter. Any like sort of marital frustrations you have at me right now?
Oh, this is my time to shine.
And, oh, that's just an eye box. Oh my God, you idiot. Okay, that bugged you. I apologize.
Put your weight on the sides.
It's making sounds.
What is?
The door handle.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. One.
Do you just want to take over this? Yeah? Do you love both linen sheets? Oh, thank you. I don't need to take makeup off.
The things you do for comedy.
The things I do for comedy. Support the SAG-AFTRA strike. My buddy.